A genocide the world couldn't ignore. In 1994, the world watched in horror as nearly 1 million people were killed in Rwanda in just 100 days. The images were brutal, the headlines relentless, and yet few stopped to ask the most important question: how did it come to this? Because Rwanda's tragedy did not begin in the 90s. It was carefully set in motion decades earlier through colonial ambition, identity manipulation, and a forgotten kingdom lost beneath the weight of history. The convenient lie. For years, the world accepted a simple explanation: that Rwanda was a land torn apart by ancient tribal hatred. Hutu against Tutsi, an endless cycle of violence. But this narrative, repeated in classrooms and newspapers alike, was dangerously misleading. The truth is far more complex and far more disturbing. What we now know as ethnic conflict was, in reality, a system imposed from the outside. A system that redefined identities and rewrote relationships within a once unified society. The Forgotten Kingdom. Before colonization, Rwanda was a centralized kingdom, structured, resilient, and culturally rich. The people spoke the same language, shared traditions, and lived under a monarch who governed through an intricate system of social organization. The terms Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa existed, but they referred more to social and economic roles than to distinct ethnic groups. Mobility between them was possible. Society was fluid, not fractured. But that would soon change. When outsiders took control. The arrival of European powers marked a turning point that would alter Rwanda's destiny. First came the Germans, then the Belgians. These foreign rulers viewed Rwandan society through the lens of racial hierarchy, a dangerous worldview imported from Europe. They began to divide the population, assigning value based on appearance, height, and fabricated pseudoscience. Identity cards were introduced, branding people as either Hutu, Tutsi, or Twa, rigid categories that never existed before. And just like that, centuries of social complexity were replaced by artificial divisions, and seeds of future violence were sown. Power given, then taken. The Belgians favored the Tutsi minority for leadership and administration roles, believing them to be more European in appearance. They gave them power, education, and authority while the Hutu majority was marginalized and excluded. This imbalance fostered resentment that simmered beneath the surface for decades. Rwanda had become a pressure cooker, one built by outsiders, but destined to explode from within. The first explosion. In 1959, just before independence, that explosion began. Hutu uprisings targeted Tutsi elites, many of whom were forced to flee the country. The Belgians, sensing the shift in power, quickly realigned their loyalties, supporting the Hutu majority and abandoning the very class they had elevated. The monarchy was abolished, and with it, Rwanda's traditional structures collapsed. What remained was a fragile republic built on historical injustice and deep mistrust. The exiles organize. By the 1970s, Rwanda was under authoritarian rule. Thousands of Tutsis remained in exile, especially in neighboring Uganda, where they formed communities and later, political movements. Among them was a generation of young men who would go on to lead the Rwandan Patriotic Front, determined to return to the country they had been forced to flee. The tension builds. Inside Rwanda, the Hutu-led government tightened its grip. Propaganda spread. Ethnic rhetoric hardened. Tutsi, still living inside the country, were treated as second-class citizens, suspects in their own land. Meanwhile, the exiles trained, organized, waited. The war begins. In 1990, the Rwandan Patriotic Front launched an invasion from Uganda, sparking a civil war that would last for 4 years. The government, now feeling threatened, used the conflict to justify more discrimination, more arrests, more fear. State-run media began labeling all Tutsis as enemies, traitors, cockroaches. The perfect storm. Then, in April 1994, the plane carrying Rwanda's president was shot down. Within hours, roadblocks appeared, death squads mobilized, and the genocide began. A nation turned on itself. Over the next 100 days, nearly 1 million people were murdered. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Families were slaughtered. The international community watched, paralyzed. Or worse, indifferent. After the silence. When the genocide ended, the world promised never again. But the damage was done. Rwanda was broken psychologically, socially, spiritually. And yet somehow, it survived. Rebuilding from ashes. Today, Rwanda is one of Africa's fastest-growing nations. Streets are clean, systems are modern. The past, though present, is often unspoken. The country has banned ethnic identification. It has prioritized unity. But deep wounds remain, and healing is a process still unfolding. Why this history matters. Understanding Rwanda's hidden past isn't just about setting the record straight. It's about recognizing how narratives are shaped, how division is designed, and how quickly a nation can be torn apart when identity becomes a weapon. The real lesson. Rwanda is not just a story of horror. It's a lesson about the consequences of colonial arrogance, of unchecked power, and of the dangerous stories we choose to believe. And if we fail to understand that, we risk repeating it. What happens when the past is erased? It doesn't disappear. It lingers. It shapes the present in ways we often fail to notice. Rwanda's story is not just about pain, it's about memory, about who gets to write history, and who is erased from it. And sometimes the stories we were never told are the ones we need most. This was one of them. There are many more. You're watching History Untold Files.